Hello, hello, holas, bienvenidos, bonjour out there. This is Spark the Flame. You have reached Spark the Flame, and I am Orlando Fernandez. I am your host. Spark the Flame is a video and all kinds of content blog that inspires and explores, and we go through the world wondering and discovering and all types of great stuff. So today I would like to actually read a little bit from a certain book. I do want to start doing book reviews, and the first book I'm going to start with is my book, Spark the Flame. Okay, this can be purchased on Amazon, or you can actually download it for free on the website sparktheflame.net, where you can also see all kinds of other great content that's created here. But I want to read a couple of pages from The Alchemist. And The Alchemist is written by Paulo Coelho. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. I believe he's Brazilian, And this is a pretty popular book, actually. If you haven't heard of it or read it, like I said, it's very popular. It's about a boy, maybe a teenager or something, young man. He's a shepherd in Spain, like a long time ago. I don't know what setting. It seemed like it's maybe early 1900s or 1800s, like that. And he's on a journey to Egypt. And it's a popular book probably amongst different kinds of populations. So it has this theme of the language of the world, which is like understanding that life itself has a language that we can understand, that we listen to, that everything in life speaks this language in a certain way, and it's not like a necessarily verbal language, but it seems like it's more of, the author also mentions like omens. So it's more like seeing signs, and these are the way that we see that the language is being communicated, and it's like the world, and he mentions the soul of the world. In my interpretation, what we're talking about is like using our intuition to understand how life is consciously communicating with us in different ways. And I think that's what he's getting at with the language of the world. I want to read a few paragraphs in a certain part, because this section here is when the main character runs into his soulmate. And I find it really beautiful how the author wrote this out. He spent more than a page describing the initial the initial meeting between them. Not even just the meeting, the initial sort of moment that they see each other and they recognize each other as their soulmate. And I've never run into this in any kind of scene that describes this moment. I've never run into this in like any work of fiction or anything, except you'll see people commenting when you're on YouTube or something, commenting on what it's like to run into their soulmate, but they'd never say that they've run into their soulmate. So I really like how he writes it. And before I read it, I just want to say, so I'm a believer that I know that when we meet different people, there's different like communications that go on, and part of that, I mean, like non-verbally, And there's like this, I truly believe that there's this sort of compatibility is a way to say it. And I'm not just talking about romantically. It's, if every person had a classification, like a type or like a set of types that they inhabit, like let's say there's like 30 categories of things that someone can be. I don't want to complicate this. I will keep it simple. I think that we instinctively are able to tell when someone matches with us more fluidly or less fluidly, and some ways of so compatibility, I think, is one word to describe this, or also chemistry if we're talking about romance, being in sync with someone, we just the right vibes. So what I'm saying is that in romance and in other kinds of relationships, I think we can tell. Sometimes it takes a little less time, sometimes it takes a little more time. We can tell when someone is really compatible with us. And if you take that to an extreme and you say some people are more compatible, some people are less compatible, and that's not saying that the less compatible people you can't get along with or you can't like work with or be a great team with, but it's just this sort of initial, like if we're each pieces that are different shapes. If you think about a puzzle, a puzzle of 1,000 pieces, and it's broken into different shapes, and each little piece has its own shape, right? And there's no two pieces that are the same, right? There's no two pieces that are the same. So if we think of humans that way, there are people, but sometimes these pieces, they're not really gonna go together, but you can kind of force them together. Sometimes you can't force them at all. But then there's pieces that actually go together. That's how I look at people. And there's different degrees. I'm not saying, you can't get along with someone, like I was saying. It's just like, I think that some people, you have an instant rapport. That's one way to put it, a rapport. Sometimes it's like really instant and really like real, just direct and very incredible rapport. And then there's like less grades of it. If we take this to the extreme and we put it in the romance department, I think that tells me that there's people out there that we can be really, really compatible with. And if we continue taking it to its extreme, which I think is a logical exercise, mental exercise, you can run mentally into someone that's your quote unquote soulmate, which is the person that you're most compatible with. To me, it's pretty logical, actually. So if you ever notice that when we look into people's eyes, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. So you may more or less, you may notice things, you may not notice things. At different times, you may notice things. At different times, it may be more easier to look into certain person's eyes or less. I think these things kind of change and have a flux, but I think that the compatibility between people, if there's a more compatibility, I think it's something that you would notice, like in the energy, like by feeling the energy, but also by seeing it in the in that interconnecting gaze of the eyes. Anyway, I would say this is my experience. No, I have not met my soulmate. I don't believe so. But just other people, and hey, I live in New York City. I see people all the time. A lot of people all the time. I work in Manhattan, Monday through Friday. Normal business hours. So I see a lot of people all of the time. And I notice that there's different compatibilities with the gazing, with the eye gaze, you know. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to kind of give a sort of my own take. And I had these thoughts before I ran into this passage. I read this last year. So with that, let's go ahead and read this beautiful passage. I found it beautiful, and I was just really I was surprised to run into this passage, and I was very I really liked it a lot, and I was very grateful to find it. By the way, it's a pretty good book. I don't subscribe, completely agree to everything he says in the book about the way the world works, because I have my own opinions, and I don't really. Yep, I just didn't agree to with everything he said. However, I think that it's a very enjoyable book, and I think it's a good book to have things to think about. If you're someone who doesn't really think that the world is alive, if you don't think that your actions matter cosmically, if you don't think that that basically you're being listened to at any point in time, no matter where you are or who you're with, if you're alone, if you think when you're alone that nothing is listening, then, well, I think this book might give you a different perspective. But I hope that doesn't scare you away from it. It's a really good book. Okay. So this begins on page 95 in my version. So this is when the main character, which is a young boy, young man, I don't know how old, and this is when he finds this girl. They're in the middle of the desert. He goes into her. He's in this caravan, and he ends up in this desert oasis because there's a war, and he has to stay there. And he's like helping his friend find the alchemist. Anyway, so he goes to a well, and he's asking people if they know who the alchemist is, where they can find the alchemist. And then one of the people that he finds is this young woman, and this is when he sees her, and this is for the first time. Finally, a young woman approached who was not dressed in black. She had a vessel on her shoulder, and her head was covered by a veil, but her face was uncovered. The boy approached her to ask about the alchemist. At that moment, it seemed to him that time stood still, and the soul of the world surged within him. When he looked into her dark eyes and saw that her lips were poised between a laugh and silence, he learned the most important part of the language that all the world spoke, the language that everyone on earth was capable of understanding in their heart. It was love. Something older than humanity, more ancient than the desert, something that exerted the same force whenever two pairs of eyes met as had theirs here at the well. She smiled, and that was certainly an omen, the omen he had been awaiting, without even knowing he was, for all his life. The omen he had sought to find with his sheep and in his books, in the crystals, and in the silence of the desert. It was the pure language of the world. It required no explanation, just as the universe needs none as it travels through endless time. What the boy felt at that moment was that he was in the presence of the only woman in his life, and that, with no need for words, she recognized the same thing. He was more certain of it than of anything in the world. He had been told by his parents and grandparents that he must fall in love and really know a person before becoming committed. But maybe people who felt that way had never learned the universal language, because when you know that language, it's easy to understand that someone in the world awaits you, whether it's in the middle of the desert or in some great city. And when two such people encounter each other and their eyes meet, the past and the future become unimportant. There is only that moment, and the incredible certainty that everything under the sun has been written by one hand only. It is the hand that evokes love and creates a twin soul for every person in the world. Without such love, one's dreams would have no meaning. Maktub, thought the boy. So that last line, maktub, that's an Arabic phrase. I'm pretty sure it means it was written, or it has been written, it was written, something like that. As in, it's alluding to like fate, in a way. So that's the passage I wanted to share with you. It's beautiful, and I also wanted to just point out that the way the author describes it there is like knowing at that moment, knowing that there's this, like, he didn't even realize that there was someone like that existed for him, but when he found her, he just knew. And without saying whether, that's true or not, like that, I like how it's described because I am someone who follows my own intuition. And what intuition to me means, like, you know. Yeah, sometimes you make mistakes, but it works enough for me to trust it. And so I like that part of it. And also, implicitly, what the author is saying is the connection between everything. The connection, there's someone on the other side of the world for you or somewhere. Everything is connected. Everything is in a system. A beautiful system of laws and rules. Well, I hope you enjoyed the passage. This was definitely longer than I anticipated, that I planned it to be. But, hey, this was fun. I should do some more readings. It'd be an easy way to pop out more videos. Well, thank you for joining. Thanks for hanging out, for being such great support. Great sports and support. With love, destiny, with the balance and the combination of destiny and self-determination. Just juggle them. Love, hugs, kisses. Please visit sparktheflame.net for all the videos. Also visit my YouTube channel. Hey, if I get 100 subscribers, I get to have YouTube/sparktheflame. So please feel free to subscribe. Okay, blessings.